In the crypto world, things move so fast, and sometimes it just takes one single move to set off an absolute firestorm. So today, we're going to dive into a really sudden, pretty dramatic price surge for a token called ASTER, and what it tells us about the incredible forces that can move an entire market in the blink of an eye.
So just imagine this. You wake up, you check the charts, and an asset you're watching is up nearly 20% in just a few hours. That's what happened with ASTER. And this wasn't some slow, gradual climb. No, this was a flat-out explosion of activity. So what on earth could cause a spike that big, that fast?
And that really gets to the heart of it, right? This surge wasn't kicked off by some amazing new tech or a huge partnership announcement. Nope, it was driven by one thing and one thing only: influence. This is the classic crypto story of hype versus fundamentals.
So who was the person with enough pull to move a whole market? Well, the spark came from one of the most recognizable names in the entire crypto universe, leading to what some are calling the CZ effect.
Okay, here's exactly what kicked the whole thing off. Changpeng Zhao, CZ, the founder of Binance, he went out and bought about 2 million ASTER tokens. Now, when a guy with his reputation makes a move like that, the market doesn't just pay attention, it reacts instantly. That one purchase sent a massive signal that just rippled through the space, and it kicked off a frenzy of speculative buying from everyone else trying to get in on the action.
And get this, he didn't just buy them quietly. CZ also went public with his thoughts on ASTER's launch, calling it a strong start. A public comment like that from him is basically like pouring gasoline on a fire. It just amplified all that buying pressure and cemented this story in people's minds that something big was happening with ASTER.
And this really sets up the main conflict in this whole story. See, on one side, you've got a project's fundamental value. That's the real stuff. Its technology, its actual use case. But on the other side, you have its narrative value. And that's all driven by hype, big-name endorsements, and pure speculation. The ASTER surge was a perfect textbook case of the narrative completely taking over.
All right, so we get why the price shot up. But what even is ASTER? To really understand the full picture here, we've got to take a closer look at the actual project that's at the center of all this chaos.
So, at its core, ASTER is the token for a decentralized exchange, or a DEX. And unlike a big centralized exchange, a DEX is all about letting people trade directly with each other, peer-to-peer, without some big company holding on to their funds. It's a really foundational idea in the world of DeFi. Now, the ASTER platform itself is actually a rebrand of an older project. It's trying to be what's called a hybrid DEX. That just means it offers both your standard spot trading, buying and selling right now, and also perpetuals, which are much more complex trading contracts. It's also designed to work on different blockchains and offers some pro-level features like hidden orders and pretty high leverage. And all of this is super recent. The project had just relaunched back in September of 2025, and then, bam! Not even 2 months later, on November 2nd, CZ makes his move and the whole thing just takes off. Okay, now here's a number I really want you to lock in. 8 billion. That's the maximum number of ASTER tokens that will ever exist. A huge supply like that can create some real headwinds for price growth down the line, and it's a super important piece of the puzzle as we move on. So, where are all those billions of tokens going? Well, take a look. More than half of that entire supply is earmarked for community incentives. In simple terms, that means airdrops to users and other giveaways designed to get more people on the platform. It's a common strategy for sure, but it also means there's this enormous overhang of tokens that could eventually hit the market. Look, a 20% surge is exciting, no doubt about it, but this is where we need to pump the brakes a little. The sources really stress caution here, because once that initial sugar rush from an endorsement wears off, you've got to look at the real factors that could impact a project's future. So there are a few big risks that anyone looking at this should be thinking about. We already talked about that super high token supply. On top of that, the market for DEXs is incredibly competitive. And, maybe most importantly, this price jump was almost all narrative, all story. There wasn't some huge new fundamental breakthrough backing it up, which makes it tough to sustain. And this really gives you a simple visual of that pressure. ASTER isn't playing in an empty field here. It's going up against some really strong, established rivals. It is a tough arena to compete in. Okay, so let's zoom out and pull this all together. What is the big lesson here? What can we really take away from the whole ASTER story? Well, it all comes back to that classic tug-of-war between hype and fundamentals. At the end of the day, this whole episode is just a perfect case study.
It shows in crystal clear terms just how much power a single well-known person can have in this market. They can literally create a massive wave of demand out of thin air based on nothing more than their reputation.
And this brings us to a really critical question that anyone in this space should be asking. Can a price rally that's built entirely on the words of one person, can that really last? Is it sustainable if the project's core tech and its position in the market aren't really strong enough to back it up in the long run? So we're going to leave you with this final thought. When you have markets that are so easily swayed by stories, by hype, by powerful personalities, the biggest challenge for all of us is trying to separate what's real from what's just noise. How do you find the actual signal in all of that? That's the question this whole event really forces us to ask.